want to respond to that tweet where it says that there's a nuance that anti-Zionist rabbis do not share what this tweeter is saying, anti-Semitic belief that Jews don't have the same secular political rights as other groups have. The answer that I have to that is that that is a difficult, meaning the right to self-determination is the one in particular. And I think that's a difficult issue to approach. Do we say that Episcopalians or Southern Baptists or Sufi Muslims have a right to self-determination based on their religious identity? This is particularly a major issue that most of the anti-Zionist ultra-Orthodox rabbis have that I know, and they've been discussing this issue for many years, is do we define Judaism religiously or secularly? Meaning, whether or not you want to say that Jewish identity is a religion, Jewish identity is solely based on a religious definition. Whatever one's, and even though there are differences in the opinions of the religious definitions between, say, the Orthodox and the Reform, and even perhaps you go to medieval times and in a small subset today between, let's say, rabbinical Jews and the Karaite Sola Scriptura Jews or other Sola Scriptura movements like the ancient Sadducees and so forth. All of these definitions are strictly religious definitions by the understanding of what religion means today and what culture means today. Meaning, who decides whether or not matrilineal descent or patrilineal descent are an arbiter of whether or not you have a Jewish identity? Well, these are religious issues that are discussed by rabbis. Whether they are the Orthodox rabbis that insist that if it is by birth, when it is by birth, that it is by matrilineal descent, although the Orthodox, of course, accept converts, or whether it is along the lines where the Reform, it's not only the Orthodox, the conservative agree with the Orthodox there as far as matrilineal descent, and it's Reform rabbis, religious figures, who are discussing the question of including patrilineal descent as well, and these discussions actually are ancient discussions. All of these are religious issues which are discussed by religious by religious leaders, by rabbis. And so therefore Jewish identity is solely a religious issue. It's not an issue of anything else, because you could have Jewish DNA, quote unquote, and not be Jewish. You could have the DNA of a Kohen and not be a Kohen. The DNA, the scientific issues are not what decides. And further, and also you could be 100% Jewish and not have a drop of Jewish DNA. President Trump's daughter is 100% Jewish. We don't know about her DNA, although there's some rumors about her mother actually being Jewish according to halacha, but it's a moot point. She underwent the giur and she's 100% Jewish. Like the story that I remember Rabbi Leff telling us in yeshiva, that he was close with a family where the wife was a gioress, and the kids in the day school asked, why is your family so close with Rabbi Leff? So then the kid said, well, he was Mesiach Levi Tumai. He said, humbly and simply, Rabbi Leff made my mother Jewish. So the kids started picking on him and said, "Oh, Rabbi Leff just made your mother Jewish. You're not really Jewish." So he came crying to the rabbi, and the rabbi said, "Wait a second. Someone comes in the shul and they say that they're Jewish. We're not checking their yichus really. In some places they might, but generally we're not doing this. We accept it's a chazaka, like we say. But you, I know you're Jewish because I was there. That I know. It's not just an assumption. It's not just something that we accept, but there's a matter of doubt. There's no doubt that you are Jewish because your mother converted, and I was there when she converted. So I know if this is your mother, I know that you're Jewish, right? Otherwise, we're relying on records or hearsay or whatever it is. But it's still questionable. But the convert we know is Jewish, and with that being said, although obviously when the UN said Zionism is racism, they meant something else. But when I hear about pushes in the Knesset to say that a Jewish convert should not be accepted at all as Jews, and that the definition of who is a Jew and what is a Jew will be solely based on ancestry and not on faith or practice, and that we're preferring, as I always say, when they're preferring Hitler's view of what is a Jew over Maimonides' view of what is a Jew, well, then that's racism. It is racism. And so to say, you can say Zionism is racism without meaning this in an anti-Semitic way, but just the opposite, to say that the concept of Zionism is antithetical to Torah values. To say that and not all Zionists agree to this, but there is a movement, particularly in the secular movements, to say that if, I've seen articles that say, Marilyn Monroe is not really Jewish because she didn't have grandparents who spoke Yiddish, or something stupid like that. People making stupid comments. Now I have a boss at work. He was born in Haifa. He doesn't keep. I saw him in front of me on Chol Hamoed Pesach eating pretzels right in front of me without any shame. Didn't even cross his mind. I'm not going to tell him. He's my supervisor. But he had the chutzpah to say, to him, and this is the mindset that for someone who's not of Jewish ancestry to call themselves Jewish, to him is like him calling himself black. He can't do it. He doesn't have the power to do that. Whereas to me, I find that very offensive because my wife is a convert. My children, therefore, in his eyes, are not Jewish. Whereas this guy doesn't keep anything. And here we are, and my wife guides a tzige bint with a spitzel, and I go with white socks on Shabbos, and my kids have payas, and you're telling me, that we're not really, and it's the same thing. My wife had that same issue when she was converting. She had a friend of hers, atheist, was born in the Heilige State in Berditchev, and she said, and my wife said something, a Yiddish word, I don't remember what it was. She said, she was hanging out with this friend of hers, and this friend said, wait a second, I'm the real Jew here. Who do you think you are? Meaning there is this aspect of racism that's particularly in the secular Jewish identity that we find detestable from a religious standpoint, because the Torah tells us v'ahavtem es hager. The Torah tells us to love the stranger, and that there's one law for the born Jew and for the convert. Take the next part. Is comparing the Zionist regime to the Nazis. Is that anti-Semitic? Again, obviously, the way I always say it is the Palestinians are not the victims of Zionism, but certain pious Jews who disagree with Zionism certainly are. the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, they they get free electricity and free water in all their camps. They get all of this refugee stuff, and their corrupt leaders steal it from them. But the Israelis give them everything, and they treat them with kid gloves. And the Israeli Arabs live better than any other Arabs in the Middle East. The Arab, whether they're Muslim, Christian, whatever they are, communities in the state of Israel have a great life, and they have tremendous benefit from being in the state of Israel. But there are Jewish people who are victimized by the state of Israel because of their ideology, because of their faith. There have been pogroms where the Israeli police come in and they beat up Jewish people with payas. There's a video, it's on my channel, Chol Hamoed Pesach, some 12 years ago, and you see the achzorius, the cruelty of the Zionist policemen with a billy club coming into the Satmar synagogue, beating people up, taking one guy with the golden kaftan, beating him up with the billy club, knocking his shtreimel off his head, breaking glass in the shul, desecrating the Sfarim. Same thing happened in Tol Saharan in the 1980s. And you want to go back further, the types of experiments they did on the Yemenite Jews, the type of all kinds of evil things, so that maybe it doesn't come to the level of what the Nazis did in the Holocaust, but it certainly is along the lines of what the Nazis did before the Holocaust, Kristallnacht, these types of things. There is what to compare the Israeli regime to the Nazis, not vis-a-vis their treatment of non-Jews, but vis-a-vis their treatment of Jews. So is that considered anti-Semitic? Would that be considered hate speech to say something like this? These are documented things that really took place in Israel. Again, it's not saying, it's not, and a little bit further. So I know Alan Dershowitz always says, he said there's nothing wrong to criticize the state of Israel as long as you're not using a different yardstick than you use for any other nation. Now, by those who would consider it a Jewish state, and say the religious people, there are religious Zionists, many of them. So what is it? So that statement should be difficult even to the religious Zionists, because if it is a Jewish state and it's supposed to be as they believe, that they think that somehow they can make it into a Torah state, which I think is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. It's too difficult to actualize. But whatever it is, so they're making this idea. Isn't that go in the face of basic Judaism, that the Jewish people, according to the Torah, are judged by a different yardstick than all the other nations in the world? By Alan Dershowitz's definition, and he learned in Yeshiva University, he should know better. But Alan Dershowitz says that to compare Jews with a different yardstick is anti-Semitic. So then what he's basically saying is that the Torah is anti-Semitic, that God is anti-Semitic. So logically, these are very difficult things to say. With that being said, I welcome this executive order. I personally am happy for it. I would like to see, as some have said, that Muslims and Sikhs and other groups that have these perceptions about them should similarly be protected, but it has to be in a way that protects freedom of speech and freedom of religion. It's the same type of fear that a lot of politically conservative Christians and Jews have about including sexual orientation on this list. Meaning, does it mean to say that if we make a preaching on Leviticus, we're not saying to kill anybody, but we're explaining and a belief that a particular activity is sin or whatever it is, would therefore, as it happens in other countries, would this also mean that it would be banned as hate speech? I heard that in Texas a number of years ago, there was a local a mayor, someone was asking for records of sermons from church leaders. That is unacceptable in America. These are the issues that we have to look into, and we have to be vigilant about. As much as I love Donald Trump, I think he's a great president. I'm very happy that he's our president. I plan on voting for him again, proudly. Whereas last time I was ambivalent. It was just anybody but Hillary. And if it would have been Trump versus Bernie, I might have voted third party. I wouldn't have voted for Bernie Sanders, but I might have voted Libertarian something. But Hillary Clinton was so bad, I had to vote for Donald Trump. Now I see as a record he's doing great, but he's not perfect. Lincoln also wasn't perfect. Lincoln also violated basic aspects of freedom and things, taking out the writ of habeas corpus and attacking the media and so forth in a much worse way. But if this is, and I'll be honest, it hurts my feelings every time I hear President Trump call Netanyahu your prime minister when he's talking to Jewish Americans. It's very hurtful. But I still love the president. He's doing a great job, and I'm very supportive of him. But we have to be cognizant of these types of issues and be vigilant and have to educate. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment, see you later.